So every now and then I try and do these episodes in the Morning Pit where I'm going to talk about 5 topics. I got 5 topics I want to discuss today, and that's what I'm going to get to. I got my 5 big topics, 5 big things I want to talk about. And inevitably what happens is I spend so much time on like the first 2 that I either rush through the final 3, or I just skip them all together. We only end up talking about 2 or 3 of the 5 topics. So I got like 5 topics written down here on the old legal pad. I may have a lot of junk written down here on the old legal pad. This is just from yesterday and today. This long list is the lowest ranked 7-0 power conference teams since 2000. Look, Clemson, number 5. That was the lowest ranked 7-0 power conference team. But just so there was that. So I mean, some of it is that, which is not very useful. But there's different things scattered throughout here that we're going to talk about. There's 5 things I want to talk about. I'm not going to list them off the top because then if I don't get to some of them, it'll be even more obvious what I didn't talk about. But 5 things I want to talk about. 5 things that I have on my brain, ranging from a little bit of history, some stuff about SMU's offense, some thoughts on Eli Holstein, some thoughts on which positions are most important for Pitt's defense. There's going to be a lot on SMU's offense. I'm thinking a lot about this offense and how Pitt can stop them or what they need to do to stop them. So a lot of that. So a little bit of history, some Eli Holstein talk, some SMU offense talk. We're going to try and get through it all today. So let's jump into it. The Tuesday edition of the Morning Pit, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I should make it like a bit or something. It should be like the 2 for Tuesday. Remember, like I always remember hearing radio stations when I was growing up. They would do 2 for Tuesday and play back to 2 songs by one band back to back. It was crazy. You heard the same band 2 songs in a row on 2 for Tuesday. I think that's what they would call it. I should call it 2 for Tuesday and just pick 2 topics and spend about 10 minutes talking about each. But instead, I'm going to go for 5 topics and spend, I don't know, roughly 4 minutes talking about each, I guess. So let's jump into, of course, what we always ask you to do. Like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content here on YouTube. And don't forget the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. First things first. It's notable to me as we talk about historical trends, and I'll be the first to admit that every season happens in a vacuum, that every season is unique from the ones that came before to the ones that come after, but it's also interesting from time to time to pick up on trends and notice trends. And one notable trend that I think is worth monitoring, or at least being aware of, I should say, not necessarily monitoring, but being aware of, is that we just wrapped up, or Pitt just wrapped up, I should say, 2 obviously perfect months. The month of September when they went 3-0, and the month of October when they went 3-0. In Pat Narduzzi's 10 years at Pitt, he has now had 5 calendar months when he has gone undefeated. And we're not counting, even December 2021 where they played 2 games. I mean, you got to play more than 2 games to get this to count. It's got to be part of the regular season. So we're not going to count August this year when they beat Kent State, or any of those other years. Virginia in 2019, actually they lost that game. We're not going to count any of those. We're not going to count the 2 December games in 2021, which they won 1 and lost 1. And we're just talking about months of the regular season. September, October, November is ultimately what it comes down to. And if you consider that, September, October, November, Pat Narduzzi has now coached 29 months. And out of those 29 months, September, October, November, dating back to the 2015 season, he has gone undefeated 5 out of those 29. Which I think is interesting. And it's even more interesting that a lot of those have happened recently. The first time Narduzzi had an undefeated month was in September of 2020, the COVID year, when Pitt went 3-0 and they beat Austin Peay, Syracuse, and Louisville. The next time was the following year when Pitt went undefeated. They went 4-0 in the month of November. They won at Duke. They beat North Carolina, Virginia, and at Syracuse. Clinching the ACC Coastal Division with the win against Virginia and then wrapping up the regular season at Syracuse. So they went 4-0 that year. Of course, they went 4-0 in November the following year as well. And that's pretty interesting sort of back-to-back there. The 4-0 record in 2022 being a bit of a surprise after they went 1-3 in the month of October. That was a pretty disastrous month for that 2022 Pitt football team. But in 2022, that November, they beat Syracuse. They had the back-to-back pick-6 game at Virginia. They beat Duke, and then they won at Miami for the second time since the Kennedy assassination. So pretty notable month there. And then, of course, you have the 2 months this year, September where they went 3-0, and October where they went 3-0. So 5 months, 5 September, October, November months in Narduzzi's tenure when Pitt has gone undefeated. 2 of them coming this year, which I think is pretty interesting. It's also interesting that this was the first undefeated October in Narduzzi's tenure. Now, I mean, obviously, when there's not a lot of undefeated months to choose from, it's not too much of a surprise. But when you look at the fact that they, I think, went 5-10 in the month of October over the previous 4 seasons, 2020 they were 0-4, 2021 they went 3-1 in October. And then the last 2 years, they won 1 game in each of those 2 years in October. Not been the greatest stretch for Pitt. They've been much better in November than they have been in October. 17-16 overall in Narduzzi's tenure in the month of October. But this year, of course, undefeated. So that, I think, is a little bit interesting. You talk about breaking historical trends. They go 5-10 in that month over the previous 4 seasons, 3-0 this month. Or this year, maybe they break, they broke a negative trend there, and we'll see what they can do carrying into November. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Of course, November starts with a huge challenge at SMU at Gerald J. Ford Stadium, not to be confused with Gerald President Ford. I don't know his middle initial. I just know that he's not a billionaire banker who paid for all of SMU Stadium, hence the name Gerald J. Ford Stadium. But I will choose to continue to, given the option of learning more about Gerald Ford, the president, and Gerald Ford, the billionaire banker, I think I will opt toward the former, because I just think it's more interesting. And if you haven't, just a brief aside, a little plug, if you're into this kind of thing, there's a podcast, I think it came from NPR, called Landslide. It's about the 1976 Republican primary between Gerald Ford and Ronald Reagan, the only election Reagan ever lost. And it's really, really interesting. Sheds a lot of interesting light on Ford, a little bit on Jimmy Carter as well. And then we're getting too far off course here, but it gives you a lot of context, and I think explains a lot of where we are right now in our current political climate. A lot of it dates back to that 1976 GOP convention. But I digress. Pitt will be playing SMU at Gerald J. Billionaire Banker Ford Stadium on Saturday. A huge game, ranked opponent, and really Pitt's opportunity for a signature win. And it's funny to say that, win on the road against a Big 12 team where you won it at the end is not a signature win, or that a win at home against your biggest rival is not a signature win, or a win in Chapel Hill, which you've never done ever in history, is not a signature win, or a game where you had 3 pick-6s is not a signature win. But the reality is, none of these rank as a signature win in the context of 2024 college football. Winning on the road against a ranked opponent does. And SMU may very well not be ranked if Pitt wins this game, but we will all know that they went to Dallas and defeated a ranked team, if that's what the outcome is. How can Pitt do that? I think there's a few things, and I'm going to tell you, like my focus today, I'm thinking more about SMU's offense, okay? And what we saw out of SMU's offense, or what we've seen out of SMU's offense this season, and particularly notable, that game at Duke on Saturday night, which was the worst game SMU's offense has played all season. It's 6 turnovers, 3 fumbles, and 3 interceptions. A lot of mistakes. We'll get to the mistakes in a second, but I'll tell you what concerns me about SMU's offense. Just watching that Duke game, there's a lot of RPO action. There's a lot of RPOs and quick-hitting slants. And I got to say, at least a few of the plays that we saw SMU make against Duke were maybe a little too reminiscent of the Western Michigan game in 2021. Now, I don't know if it's the exact same offense. I don't know if it's, run exactly. I'd have to ask someone smarter than me how close those offenses are. But some of the plays they were hitting sure looked awfully familiar. And then SMU was able to use those slants, which they went to the slants a lot. Sometimes it resulted in an interception, but they went to those slants a lot. And then their biggest play of the game, an 80-yard touchdown pass, was a slant and go, where the slot receiver, had the boundary safety, the strong safety on him, faked a slant, and then took off. The strong safety totally bit on the slant, and by the time he realized that the slot receiver had, run the go route instead, there was 5 yards in between them, and it didn't matter. It was an easy throw and catch, easy pass for Kevin Jennings, and it's an 80-yard touchdown. That's concerning. That's the kind of play that beats Pitt. And it was a little bit unnerving to watch how some of those plays were developing and watch how SMU hit some of those plays. Since that Western Michigan game in 2021, Pitt has gotten much better at defending those kinds of offenses, defending those kinds of plays, those RPOs and slants. I think their outside linebackers have gotten better at it. Their safeties have gotten better at playing it. But you're going to need that. You're going to need that in this game because that's what SMU is going to try to do. And if Rhett Lashley is looking back at what times where this Pitt defense, which by Pat Narduzzi's admission has not really changed all that much over the last 10 years, but if Rhett Lashley is looking for ways to beat this Pitt defense or examples of how this Pitt defense has gotten beaten in the past, I wouldn't be surprised if he's watching tape of that 2021 Western Michigan game. Different personnel, obviously different players, and slight tweaks to the defensive scheme, but that offensive approach beat this defense 3 years ago. I would imagine they'll try to do it again on Saturday night. And that's concerning. I think that's really concerning. Now, at the same time, Kevin Jennings threw 3 interceptions. It was his worst game of the season, the most interceptions he's thrown all year. And when you look at Pro Football Focus, they ranked the turnover-worthy plays, which is interceptions or times you put the ball in jeopardy, even if it didn't result in the turnover. So, there was a fumble at the 1 in that SMU Duke game. Kevin Jennings fumbled at the 1, and SMU recovered it. So, that counts. That's turnover-worthy play because you fumbled the ball. But when you look on the whole season, Jennings only has 6 of those turnover-worthy plays. 5 were against Duke, but he has largely taken care of the ball and done a good job protecting the ball all season long. The Duke game was an exception. I think it was an exception for a few reasons. I think there were a few things that that stand out. 2 of the 3 interceptions, and this was really notable to me, and this is where we segue into what Pitt needs to do to defend SMU. But 2 of the 3 interceptions were throws. One was a diving interception in the second half. One was during a 2-minute drill at the end of the first half, where Duke's defense, and I think they made the comment on the broadcast of the defender ran the route for the receiver. The defender ran the route better than the receiver. And that kind of thing that's where the film work comes in, the prep. Knowing what kind of passes the quarterback likes to throw, knowing what kind of routes the receivers like to run, and knowing what they like to do in certain situations, and then recognizing those routes when they come up. And when you watch some of the plays, it looks like the Duke defender is the intended receiver, because they ran the route that well, because they defended it that well. And when some things like fumbles, the tight end fumbled in the last 15 seconds of the first half. There was, the other interception that Jennings threw, he was scrambling and just kind of threw back across his body. It was a terrible decision. That wasn't about film work or preparation. That was just about the quarterback making a horrible decision and Duke just being there to capitalize. But those 2 interceptions kind of reminded me of what Pitt did against Syracuse, and more specifically what guys like Kyle Lewis and Braylon Lovelace and Rasheem Biles, all the 3 guys who scored pick sixes, what they said after the game against Syracuse. It was what they said is they gave a lot of credit to their film work, that they knew what kind of passes Kyle McCord liked to throw, they knew what kind of what routes the receivers liked to run, and they were able to anticipate and jump the route. And one of them, I forget which one, I think maybe the one Kyle Lewis intercepted, or it might have been Lovelace's interception. One of the 2, the player said that Syracuse had hit that route a couple times already in the game, so when they went to it a third time, the Pitt linebacker, whether it's Lovelace, who you see right there making the interception and then returning it for the pick six, good timing. Maybe it was Lovelace who made that play, who made the play that I'm thinking of. But that they recognized it, and they were able to get the jump on it and be more of a receiver than the intended receiver was. And so I think where this ties together is Duke looked like it figured out some things about Kevin Jennings and had a good idea of how he was going to throw and where he was going to throw in that game. Pitt's linebackers in particular seem to have the same sort of read on what Kyle McCord wanted to do. They're going to need that kind of preparation for this game on Saturday night. They're going to need to be able to anticipate those routes. Now, not overplay those routes or what they see, like the strong safety did for Duke to give up the 80-yard touchdown pass, where you're jumping on the slant route and giving up a go, whatever they call it, a sluggo or something, a slant and go route. You don't want to do that, but you do need to have that level of preparation. And I thought it was interesting that Lovelace, Lewis, and Biles all in the postgame talked a lot about the film work that they do. They're very proud of it. They were very proud of how much time they put in. They were very proud of how hard they study the film. And obviously, I think they felt like these were the results. It's a good kind of game, I think, just as an aside. I think that's a good kind of game to help continue setting the tone going forward. Because, with 5 interceptions, with 3 pick sixes, you can really look at it and say, this is the value of film work. This is the value of study. Is you can find out, you go into the game with a clear idea of what the opponent is trying to do. And everybody studies film, everybody watches tape and all that stuff. But when you have a game like that, I think you can get an opportunity to push the players a little bit more and say, this is what we can do if we put in the time and the work. And this is the result we can get. And I think that's got to be pretty motivational, I would think, for the players. And so they're going to need that same kind of approach when it comes to this SMU game. Now, I think the linebackers are going to be huge in this game, because there was another thing I noticed about SMU throughout their game against Duke. They like to attack the perimeter. They like to have, they ran screen passes. They ran a number of plays where Kevin Jennings would roll out and then throw to a receiver in the flat. It could be the running back, could be the tight end, could be the receiver, run sort of, kind of run parallel with a crossing route while he's rolling out. They like to attack the perimeter. They ran a double reverse in the game. The touchdown that, I forget who scored the touchdown, but it was on a wide toss. I forget if it was Rashard Smith or L.J. Johnson Jr., but it was a wide toss. It was a very wide toss, and then it was one man to beat. The safety was late getting to the play, but it was the running back on a wide toss, out there in the perimeter all by himself against a linebacker. Now, I like Pitt's matchup in that. I like Pitt's ability to make those plays, whether it's Kyle Lewis or Rasheem Biles or Braylon Lovelace or even Jordan Bass, who I think played well against Syracuse. I like Pitt in those matchups, but I think they're going to be tested. And I think SMU is going to test them. Again, with the passes to the flat, with the screens, with the swing passes to Rashard Smith. He's good at those kinds of plays. And I think they're going to try to test Pitt in that way. Rolling out Kevin Jennings, getting him on the move, and seeing what they can get on the perimeter. And so Pitt's linebackers are coming off one of the best games we've seen from any Pitt position group, really, offense or defense, in a long time, and certainly I'd say the best game we've seen from a group of Pitt linebackers since I don't know when, maybe the 13-9 game. But now they're going to have a new challenge on there. They're going to be tested even more than Syracuse tested them, and they're going to have opportunities to make plays, maybe even more than they had against Syracuse, which is saying something because obviously they made a ton of plays against Syracuse. So I think the linebackers are huge in this game. The outside linebackers in particular, Lewis, Lovelace, Biles, and Bass, are going to be huge. Double L and double B. Wow. Their names make the initials LB. Come on. Lewis and Biles, Lovelace and Bass, get out of here. Did we not think of this before? How did this not occur to anyone before? It's amazing. I'm going to be thinking about that for a while. I don't know why. It's fascinating. Last thing, Eli Holstein. Pat Narduzzi tried to dodge the question. We kept pressing him on it to get him to say something. He said it's wait and see with Eli Holstein. Holstein left the Syracuse game with something. Pat Narduzzi initially said it seemed like he had dirt in his eye, but it was something else. He was in the tent for a long time, went from the tent straight to the locker room. Nate Yarnell finished the game. Eli Holstein did not return to the sideline. Pat Narduzzi said after the game that he was jumping up and down and he'll be fine. On Monday, at his press conference. Pat Narduzzi said it's wait and see with Eli Holstein. Said Nate Yarnell was in real early Monday morning watching film. Said Nate Yarnell will get some first-team snaps this week. I don't know. Everything I hear says Holstein should be good to go. Whether that comes to pass or not, whether this is gamesmanship by Pat Narduzzi or genuine concern about Eli Holstein's condition going forward, I don't know. But that's what I'm hearing, is that Holstein should play and is expected to play. But I wouldn't be surprised if Pat Narduzzi keeps that close to his vest until Saturday when Pete Thamel tweets it out in the morning. That seems to be how it goes. But that's kind of the latest on that situation. We'll see what it looks like. I guess is the best way to say it as we go through the week. I'm sure we won't talk to Eli Holstein during this week. We don't talk to him at all anyway, even when he is completely healthy and there are no questions about his availability. So I'm sure we won't have a chance to interview him this week. But either way, we'll see what comes together. Pitt's going to have to score, obviously, on SMU. They're going to need to have a good offensive game. SMU's run defense is very good, so there's going to be even more pressure on the passing game, although I'd like to see what Desmond Reed can do here. But to me, so much of this game is going to come down to how Pitt defends SMU's offense and how they defend Kevin Jennings, Brashard Smith, those receivers. That's what a big part of this is going to be. We'll have thoughts on the offense as we go through the week, but the defense is really what I'm watching here. And yeah, obviously you have to score touchdowns. There's no question about that. If they lose this game, 10-9 or something, I don't want everybody complaining like, "Oh, you said offense wouldn't matter in this game." I mean, obviously they're going to have to score, but this SMU offense is going to test them in a lot of ways. Maybe ways they haven't been tested yet, and by more talented players and a more talented offense than they've faced yet. And so a big part of this game to me is defense and what Pitt can do on defense against SMU's offense. But we got a lot of time this week to break it all down. It's a huge game. We'll be talking about it all week. I can't wait. Looking forward to it. And we appreciate you tuning in here on a Tuesday morning. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I hope your week is off to a great start. I hope you have a great Tuesday. We'll catch you on Panther-Lair.com, and we'll see you tomorrow morning for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.